When we speak of the Roman army, we always pick up the story when they are already at the battlefield, facing their enemy. But what often goes unreported are the weeks and even months it took for the army to get there in the first place. More often than not, this involved Roman soldiers marching on foot across the empire. The typical daily march would cover around 10 to 15 miles and take about 3.5 to 5.5 hours. During this time, soldiers would be kitted up and lugging about 40 kilograms worth of gear. Such long, strenuous, and boring marches are best executed at a precise cadence for the purpose of keeping soldiers moving as a disciplined unit and in formation. This raises the question, did the Roman army employ songs while marching? Specifically, what I'm wondering is, did they have call and response songs like you see with modern militaries conducting training?
My corps, your corps, our corps, Marine corps.
The latest adaptation of the film Ben-Hur seems to think so. Take a listen. I have to say, this sounds amazing from a cinematic perspective, and I really want to believe it actually happened. But at the same time, I've seen too many Hollywood history films to take this assumption for granted. In this video, we're going to see what evidence we can dig up to verify such a claim. Let me start by stating we admittedly have very little direct evidence to go on. That being said, we can at least start a bit more broadly and ask whether the Roman military ever used music at all. The answer here is at least a pretty straightforward yes. We know this from archaeological and artistic records of the legionary musical instruments. These included the tuba, bucina, and cornu. As for how they were used, it appears that they primarily served to issue orders. For instance, special musical calls were used for wake-up, assembly, advance, attack, retreat, and a whole host of other important commands. As an example, the 4th century historian Ammianus Marcellinus writes of their use when the Romans were advancing on Persian forces, stating that, quote, "Therefore, when the two armies beheld each other, the Romans glittering with their crested helmets and brandishing their shields, proceeded slowly, their bands playing an anapaestic measure." We see further literary evidence when Dio recounts an instance of legions in Germania ordered into quick march at the sound of trumpets. Such was the importance of military musicians that these individuals were part of the higher legionary ranks who received increased pay and were immune from a common soldier's duties. This isn't all too surprising, as musical instruments have long been used by many armies to control their forces. The Spartans, for instance, are rather famous for advancing into battle under the steady rhythm set by the flutes. So now that we have pretty firmly established that songs and instruments were used, we can now move on to whether or not musical chants were used. Specifically, I'm interested to find out if Romans ever had anything like the marching call and response songs we see today in military boot camps and in Hollywood war films. Well, it turns out that we do in fact have some evidence to support the idea of soldiers chanting. This actually comes down to us from ancient authors writing about Roman triumphs. Apparently it was tradition for the parading troops to sing about their commander. These songs might be commemorative, eulogistic, or even playfully mocking. Luckily, our ancient sources actually recorded one of these. This one has become known as the Urbani. It was sung in the 1st century BC for the triumph of Julius Caesar and takes some pretty irreverent potshots at his sexual exploits. Here are some of the lines translated into English. Quote, "Romans, watch your wives, see the bald adulterers back home. You fucked away in Gaul the gold you borrowed here in Rome. Caesar screwed the lands of Gaul, Nicomedes screwed our Caesar. Look, Caesar now is triumphing, the one who screwed the Gauls. No, Nicomedes triumphs though, the one who screwed our Caesar." End quote. However, while we have the words, we sadly lack records of how these ancient tunes sounded like. Some evidence does appear in writing when the poet Prudentius states that Roman soldiers sung to a meter of 3 groups of 4 syllables, followed by 1 group of 3 syllables. This pattern would basically sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, and repeat. But for now, that's about it for our body of evidence. With it, we can't necessarily conclude that the Romans chanted on the march with a call and response, but I think it's very likely given what we've presented so far, especially when coupled with the undeniable value of cadence songs for soldiers routinely on the march, like those of the Roman legionaries. The chant presented in Ben-Hur is therefore one plausible version of this. I'm also happy to announce that we've partnered with the YouTuber Metatron and his reenactment group to present another such interpretation. Check it out.
Passo. Roma, Invicta. Roma, Invicta. Roma, Invicta. Roma, Invicta. Passo. Legio, Vigésima. Legio, Vigésima. Legio, Vigésima. Legio, Vigésima. Urbani, servate, uxores. Urbani, servate, uxores. Urbani, servate, uxores. Urbani, servate, uxores. Calvum abducimus. Moecum, calvum abducimus. Moecum, calvum abducimus. Roma, Invicta. Roma, Invicta. Roma, Invicta. Roma, Invicta.
So that was undeniably really epic. If you'd like to see more of this kind of stuff, I definitely recommend you check out the Metatron's channel. We'll be doing a lot more partnerships, but for now, if you head on over, you'll be seeing a lot of content that he's been uploading with his new legion that he's now raising, as well as a lot of past and ongoing content that talks about Roman history, medieval history, armor, weapons, all kinds of stuff. He's a fantastic guy, a very skilled linguist, so definitely go ahead and check him out and tell him I said hi. Thanks.